Heavy singles followed by higher rep work are a time-proven training approach. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today, but a quick reminder, if you guys will please click like down below, be greatly appreciated. If you're not subscribed or following, please do so. And if you'll be kind enough to drop me a comment down below, I would appreciate that also. Thank you so much. So again, this is an old school protocol we saw done for decades, many years ago, way before anabolics were particularly popular or heavily dosed or any of that. And it worked and it was effective. Guys would do heavy singles or max out or close to maxes, right? A heavy one rep set, and then they would do their pump work. And a lot of times they're like, oh, this works really well. We get big and strong at the same time. And ironically, I've seen some modern coaches, I've seen some social media guys who themselves, I'm like, hey, you're not particularly big or strong, you know, and I'm not even saying I am the biggest or the strongest guy, but just being realistic here, like I never see guys, I see guys only flounder doing this, but I've had tons of clients get insanely jacked and strong doing it that I've demonstrated for you guys. They did it at Westside Barbell and it worked great. Like you look at their max effort days, they hit a 1 rep max and then they do all this volume and hypertrophy and supplemental work behind it. That was the strongest gym in the world. But bodybuilders used to do it back in the day. And here was the thing that I thought was interesting when you think about it. And I'll discuss kind of the different approaches you can use. This has been studied in the lab. And you know what researchers found? They were like, you know, if you do a heavy single around 90% or slightly higher of your max, guess what happens? When we measure the activity on a 10 rep set using any of the same muscles, like it didn't have to be the same exercise. It could just be a similar exercise, right? You could do it on a bench press and then your dumbbell presses or incline dumbbell presses, it would carry over. As long as you did it fairly close to afterwards, what happened? They had a higher neuromuscular efficiency. They had higher neural activity on those 10 rep sets. And at least one study, they found that their 10 rep strength was slightly better. You know, now if you hit a true grindy max, it wouldn't always be. But what they found when they tested it, if the lifter or the test subject hit a lift around 90% or a little bit above it for 1 rep, it created some attenuation, right? So when they went to do a 10 rep set, they were slightly stronger on their 10 rep sets and what they were capable of lifting for 10 reps afterwards. Okay, so think about this from an efficiency perspective. People are like, oh, there's no benefit. Really, there is some hypertrophy to singles. I'm not saying you're going to get crazy jacked on them, but we've seen definite examples of them work decently well. I mean, the problem to say that it doesn't work, I've watched guys who do some of the Bulgarian type training, which I am not always a fan of. I'm not telling you to go do it. I messed with it. It was crazy. Who are pretty dang jacked and strong, and it's like they're doing a lot of heavy singles, you know, like a max squat every day or whatever. And we see it, and we've seen it with the Bulgarian lifters. They weren't exactly, you know, tiny little shrimps doing this, but it did work. Now, granted, there's going to be anabolics and other stuff, but I digress back over to the point. Let's talk about efficiency. So if you are getting better neural efficiency and better performance on your 10 rep sets, is there more growth potential? In other words, if you do a single, then let's say you do 3 sets of 10, and those sets of 10 have better performance, I'm not saying it's guaranteed that you're going to get more muscle from them, but if it does, isn't there at least a potential for it? I think most of us, I think everyone, whether you're looking at research or you're looking at anecdote, we all understand that progressive overload is a critical component to muscle growth, right? You need to get stronger, even if it's rep strength, right? And in other words, if you can do 200 pounds for 10 and you get to where you can do 205 for 10 or 220 or 225 for 10, you're probably going to be bigger. Again, assuming similar ranges of motion, not cheating. You guys know what I mean. But what about if you take that 200, you get to 12, 13, 14? Well, the same thing. Yeah, you're usually going to get bigger, right? You're generally going to see a size increase with that over time, with that progressive overload. Bigger muscle is capable of doing more work, and doing more work that you can recover from that is stimulatory is going to cause more muscle growth. So back over to that point, if those 10 rep sets are getting better nervous system coordination, right? They're seeing the EMG studies, they light up more. They're finding the performance is better, like you're able to lift a little more weight for 10 reps, or your 10 rep max turns into an 11 or 12. Well, isn't that a sign that that's a really good set? In other words, we've improved the efficiency of the set. Not just about a work set, it's like we literally got better. We got more muscle fiber recruitment potentially during that set. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's like, okay, it makes sense. Plus there's the case, man, I've seen Christian Thibodeau, again, very, very well-known coach out there. Also, again, advanced degree in the field. Well-known coach. We're friends. We chat from time to time. He's actually quoted me before. He actually put my name in an article or two. So, but he said similar stuff that, look, those strength gains do carry over to potential long-term muscle growth, right? That neural drive that you build from the big, heavy lifts can carry over to your hypertrophy work down the road through improved efficiency. Okay? He's big and strong, jacked. He coaches plenty of big, strong, jacked people. He's noted that. So again, we come over to this idea. This is something that people started doing in the 40s, 50s, 60s. People realized a long time ago it does seem to work. A lot of modern coaches have implemented it for some of the best athletes in the world. It seems to work. And we've got studies in the lab looking at it, measuring what it does, and they're like, okay, it does seem to work, and we think we know why it works. Usually when we get to a point to where people in the trenches, the bros, figured out, hey, this is an effective method, and we see elite coaches start applying it to elite athletes and get results. And then researchers go to the lab and measure it and say, oh, yeah, it actually seems to do something. And we measured how it seems to do it. We think we know why it works. We can usually look at that and say that's pretty effective. It's pretty effective. So it's a completely viable training approach to come in and hit a fairly heavy training max. Doesn't have to be 100%. Because even those studies were around 90 or just above 90%. In other words, your max is 300, do like 270, 275 on an exercise, and then do some pins. And it doesn't have to be the same movement. You could literally do that on a bench press and then go do your weighted dips. And I'll go so far as to say even a deadlift, it might carry over to your pull-ups or rows. That's what I'm saying. It's a viable approach. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.